I'm so excited for this. Of course, the winner of this game is going to be the number one seed in the NFC, is going to win the NFC North, of course, have home field advantage throughout the playoffs and that bye week. It's a rematch of that week 7, 31-29 win for the Lions at US Bank Stadium. The Vikings went up by 10 early. The Lions then scored 3 touchdowns in the second quarter. Vikings cut the lead. They had a fumble recovery for a touchdown. Bates nailed that field goal with 15 seconds left. Of course, we'll talk more in detail about some of the things that happened in their first matchup. Tage, I want to start with the Lions offense against the Vikings defense, and we're fresh off an awesome Ben Johnson, Kyle Shanahan, like showing off for each other on Monday Night Football. That was just a pleasure to watch. And I found myself thinking, I just love watching Jahmyr Gibbs play football. Like, he is such a fun player that I think Ben Johnson realizes, of course, how much of a weapon he is. And unfortunately, with David Montgomery out, you do have to just continue to lean into Gibbs. And I kind of like what that has produced for this offense. We talked about this offense stage at least like 6 times this season, just all the ways they attack the middle of the field, all the ways that they space their concepts really, really well. For me, it's just so fun because they're, like, you call them trick plays, but it's just kind of the natural course of the offense, where you have
Yeah.
Penei Sewell as the kind of ghost player behind outside zone. I just really hope that if Ben Johnson, assuming really when he becomes a head coach, that he continues to just, like, it's like you see in the Matrix. Like, you can just see football in this really, really unique way, because preparing for them must be an absolute nightmare. Everything is building off of something else. You're calling a reverse pass to Jameson Williams off of that kind of similar play that they scored a touchdown against San Francisco last year's NFC Championship game. What do you have here overall for our beloved Lions offense?
Yeah, a lot to go through with the Lions offense. And you mentioned so many things about how Ben Johnson is doing such a good job as a play caller. Every player in this offense like really understands their job, and they're all playing really well and contributing a lot to this offense. And that's where you get an offense that ranks third in EPA per play on the season so far. Since week 13, they still rank third in EPA per play on offense, just behind the Bills and Ravens. So they're still playing well at this point in the season, which is encouraging going into the playoffs. They're top 5 at both passing and rushing, so very well-balanced offense, and this is my favorite Ben Johnson stat, but the Lions are 3rd in motion rate and 1st in play action on the season so far, so he's just continuing to hit all the right buttons for what we usually see leads to a successful offense, so I really like that from him as a play caller this year. When you look at their personnel, they don't use a ton of 11 personnel relative to the rest of the league. They're in the bottom 10, in terms of 11 personnel rate. But what we see from that is they have a lot of 2 tight end sets that they can both run and pass out of, and then they really like to bring on the extra offensive lineman and Dan Skipper. And you saw that play. In the red zone in a goal to go situation where Dan Skipper like really just opened up a hole, to lead to that touchdown. And like he is a really good 6th offensive lineman to bring onto the field. Like, the Lions have the luxury of having him, and being able to use him when a lot of teams don't even have 5. Good offensive linemen. Like the Lions having 6 and them being all healthy has been really big. And then when you go over to the passing game in particular, it's the same thing that we've seen the past couple of years from the Lions offense. 30th in average up the target, 2nd in yards after catch. And you look at who is contributing to the high yards after catch. Jameson Williams leads the team in yards after catch over expected. Jahmyr Gibbs, like you mentioned, has been really good catching the ball out of the backfield and turning that into positive gain. Even Sam Laporta, who's had a bit of a down year relative to what he was last year, is still pretty good after the catch as well. And so what you get from this is they're very good against man coverage, so teams don't play it that often, and then they're 2nd in the league against single high coverage, and they're really able to just access the middle of the field often, like you brought up, where Goff is a 0.42 EPA per pass on middle of the field passes, but a 0.00 EPA per pass on passes outside of the middle of the field, and so that's led to them just targeting the middle of the field a lot, and so pass game is really good. And then, as you brought up, like Jahmyr Gibbs is just doing a fantastic job in the run game as well.
I like that you mentioned the players sort of in their roles. And for me, watching Jameson Williams at different points this year has been really, really great. I think, early on, I was trying to get, you get the Blue Blur nickname going, but that is, of course, a Sonic nickname where that Sonic Knuckles is already taken. I try and push Blue Lightning around. That doesn't get picked up. It's hard times out here in the Detroit Lions nickname business. But seeing him as Yeah, like he is your gadget player in some ways when he's running that sort of end around, but he's also like a real receiver in a lot of ways. Of course, we can think of times where he's running straight by guys, but I think he's really, kind of learning how to use that speed. And Ben Johnson is putting him in situations where you can use that speed to open up different routes and really take advantage of that skill set outside of just being a, hey, I'm going to run by you type of guy. So seeing him continue to grow has been great. Watching Jared Goff this year has been so fun. I feel like I've talked about it a few times this year. And, we think about quarterbacks, and I feel like this season has been a good example where a lot of times it's not that the quarterback is like changing at their core. It's just like they have a kind of baseline level and they're hitting kind of one side of their level of play just based on how things have been going. I do want to ask you though, I don't know, do you have some concerns about the offensive line a little bit? I feel like that is something that and it could just be that Tage, you of course want the Lions to win games, and when pressure happens, you tilt a little bit, you send a tilted text. I don't know if you have any real concerns about the offensive line.
Yeah, I mean that is a fair point to bring up. I still think the offensive line is really really good for the Lions, especially just in the run game. I mean, like the way that they're able to often push back the line of scrimmage, to be able to let Jameer Gibbs to really accelerate, before being touched and hit the second level, I think has been impressive. Obviously, they struggled a bit with Nick Bosa, in the 49ers game, so if they run into a very high end pass rusher in the playoffs on the edge, like especially against Taylor Decker, on the left side of their offense line, like I do think that is an area that defenses could look to attack. But overall, still feeling pretty good about the Lions' offensive line heading into the playoffs.
Let's move on here to the Vikings defense off of a strong game against the Packers, where early on you saw them on third and fourth down playing man coverage and being comfortable getting in the Packers receivers' faces. Now, you mentioned how good the Lions are against man coverage. That's going to be super interesting for me just to see, how much man coverage are you going to play? Are you comfortable playing zone? And it's kind of funny because you're not really comfortable playing anything against the Lions offense. Like you're hoping for, I guess, an under center snap where you can kind of generate pressure through the A gap when they're on their drop back game and you sort of get something in that way. I'm excited to watch Ivan Pace Jr. in his second game back be able to help deal with the run game. I'm kind of curious if you can just beat Minnesota at the defensive tackle spot in the run game. I think that's something that Detroit will certainly test. And I mean, the number that they've created one turnover per game is awesome. Of course, as I mentioned, we had that fumble six in the last game that they played. It would be pretty sick if they had one in every single game for all 17 games. I think that would be fun. What do you have here for the Vikings defense?
Yeah, I mean, Vikings defense is the same way where I don't think you feel super comfortable like running anything against them because of how well they've been playing this year. They're second in EPA per play allowed on the season. Before that Packers game, they were struggling a little bit on defense. Obviously getting Ivan Pace back in the lineup and just having a very sound game overall, makes you feel better about their defense going forward. And like the main thing for the Vikings defense this entire year is they are forcing turnovers, like you mentioned, but they've also just had like an elite run defense. Like teams have really struggled to run the ball against them. Even in the first Lions Vikings matchup, from earlier this year, the Lions only had a 15th percentile success rate when rushing the ball against the Vikings. Obviously, had the one fumble, which also skewed their EPA, but they just weren't able to have that many successful runs other than Jameer Gibbs, in the second quarter. So, that's definitely something to watch in this game. The thing that really like shows to me that the Vikings are really well coached on defense, from what Brian Flores is able to do, is they're the best defense in the league against play action, and they're the fifth best defense in the league against motion. And so they're just really sound in when the offense tries to throw some sort of aversion or like distraction at them. Like the Vikings defense is just able to overcome it often. And when you look at their coverages, like you mentioned, like they play a lot of zone coverage. They're very good in both man or zone, so they're comfortable doing both of that. And in the first Lions Vikings matchup this year, I talked about how the Lions usually do really well against single high, but Minnesota actually got them a decent amount of times in single high. They ran cover one or cover three 14 times, and the Lions only had 6 of those 14 plays be successful. The Lions tore up their too high coverage, and so it'll be interesting to see what Brian Flores does in this matchup based on what the Lions are usually good at playing against versus like what he had success with in the week 7 matchup.
Dealing with the run game, that is again, it's something that is so interesting because I don't know, I guess it kind of like passed my mind that they were able to really deal with it well in that game. Then going back and watch it, you kind of see it. Of course, the Vikings go up 10-0 early. It feels like the Lions are gonna move to pass a little bit there. And against the Packers, that the Vikings had a good day by EPA per rush, but their success rate, I think it was like in the kind of the mid 40s, or I think it was at 40, which I mean, not an awful day. I think that you probably live with that if the Lions are in that kind of 60th percentile in terms of success rate, as long as you're able to, get some of those splash plays, whether it's you're going to watch a linebacker blitz to the B gap, you're going to try and change the look post snap for the offensive line. And the Lions offensive line does a really good job with those sorts of things. It just felt like sometimes the Vikings were able to kind of beat guys up front. So I think that will be a great one to look at. Let's talk about a positive matchup here for the Lions offense. What do you got?
Yeah, so since we talk about the Lions basically every week on the show, I say the same thing every week about the positive matchup, which is middle of the field passing. Like this is like basically the one area where the Vikings don't rank in the top 10 in is defending middle of the field passes. Lions are the best team in the league with middle of the field passes. Amon-Ra St. Brown has been targeted 45 times over the middle of the field this season, has a 60% success rate. Has been very explosive on his targets. Sam Laporta with 28 targets over the middle of the field, 54% success rate. And then even Tim Patrick and Jamison Williams do a good job of getting open over the middle of the field. And especially on late downs, like Tim Patrick has been someone to emerge for the Lions. So I think that this will be a positive matchup for the Lions in this game is attacking that middle of the field.
The Vikings early on in the season had these awesome clips of linebackers just really able to sort of erase the middle of the field. Of course, they get a bunch of injuries at both linebacker spots, and sometimes they're just playing one linebacker on the field in some of their looks. So I'm interested to see if we get some of those high level kind of clips from Minnesota, where it feels like zone coverage players are, not too keen on biting on the run fake, but then also really able to get back, get to that either hash mark, kind of in between hash mark and number sort of area, take away some of those in breaking routes. I do think the Lions do a good job of, even if it's just one in breaker, like there's always something kind of working either against it or kind of behind it in a way that if your linebacker takes that away, Goff is comfortable still kind of finding that second window. So that's going to be something that we're looking at the entire time. What are you thinking here as a positive matchup for the Vikings defense?
Yes, this one I've gone a little bit back and forth on, but I do think that it'll end up being when the Vikings blitz the Lions in this game because the Vikings blitz a lot, obviously, but like they're really good at it when they do blitz. And in the first matchup, the Lions definitely struggled against the blitz in certain situations where they had a 47% success rate when blitzed versus a 67% success rate when not blitzed. And you look through some of the plays. So Jared Goff sacked for 9 yards by Jonathan Grenard. He ended up fumbling but recovering it. That was a blitz by Flores. Another Jared Goff 9 yard sack by Andrew Van Ginkel, in which the Lions also had holding on that play was another blitz. And then there was another play where Goff just had to get the ball out quickly to Jamison Williams, got tackled for a 4 yard loss. And then there were some incompletions in there as well. So like even though the Lions had a couple explosives against the blitz, like that's kind of the high variance game that you play when you're blitzing them. But the whole like kind of name of this game is when you put Goff under pressure, you can usually have good things happen for your defense. And so I really think the Vikings will try to key in on that in this matchup.
In that first game, I did think Detroit did a few nice things, really, after those first few drives where it did feel like, Minnesota jumped on them a little bit, but they had the situation where you're motioning a receiver kind of into the core of the formation to block the edge player. So you kind of are able to be plus numbers in terms of the pass game or in terms of pass blocking just from a offensive line versus defensive line. And then also you're kind of burning a coverage player too, because that player should be in man coverage against that receiver in that situation. So I was impressed with the way Ben Johnson had answers sort of through the game. So I think you can kind of look at some of the numbers and they tell you the story of like, hey, like those splash plays really, really impact, and those are big things on both ends of that. And I think that the Lions, maybe they're just kind of fine with that, where they're like, if it means that the first quarter sack leads to a third quarter touchdown, I think that's something that you can sort
Yeah.
of live with. I'm really interested in those under center, like drop back straight drop back pass game for the Lions. When they do that, they're a lot of times they're kind of throwing that quick out to Amon-Ra St. Brown. I wonder if you can get that A gap pressure with the linebacker where the running back's job is really, really hard when if they're splitting with the center or if they're kind of reading through to the linebacker, literally from a footwork perspective, because obviously you
Mhm.
can't go straight forward. It's not the same as a shotgun pass protection where the running back can really kind of square that linebacker up. You're kind of working to one side of the quarterback. You're getting back there. Maybe a linebacker's coming from the other side, and you're kind of having to sift through that a little bit. So that one is going to be a good one to look at. And again, thinking back to that Packers game where the Vikings are super happy to be like, look, we're going to play man coverage against you. And I'm interested to see if Flores feels confident just using that a little bit. Again, I said it and I do believe it. Where I mean, you call man or you call zone against the Lions, they're going to have a way to beat you. I think not that man is necessarily easier to beat than zone, but if you think that you can match up with everyone, yeah, go ahead and play man coverage. I think it's hard though when you have Amon St. Brown just really able to create separation. James Williams, obviously, as we mentioned, a unique player. Sam Laporta, that's just a nightmare to deal with. So it's obviously a different unit than the Packers. I just wonder maybe we get one or two spots early on where if you're able to get that third down and maybe it's in their own
Mhm.
zone. I think there was a fake punt the first time. Maybe you're able to force a bad fake punt and kind of create some excitement there. Tay, speaking of excitement, do you have just a fun matchup that you're looking over here for from the Lions offense perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, from my perspective, it has to be Penny Sewell versus Jonathan Grenard, where Grenard is having such a good season as a pass rusher, constantly getting pressure on the quarterback. Sewell is one of the better offensive tackles in the league. Have so much fun watching him in both the pass and the run game every week. So, yeah, when the Lions do go into those under center dropbacks, watching that specific matchup and Sewell trying to make sure that Grenard doesn't get to Goff in the pocket will be really fun to watch in this game.
I can't wait to see what. I mean, let's get Penny Sewell under center. Tish. That's what I want to see. Just like what is in the mind of Ben Johnson going to cook up here? You mentioned Sewell. I'm excited for I'm seeing his pass protection reps, his run reps. But when he gets to the second level, I think he's usually able to do some exciting things. So I think the linebackers for the Vikings, you don't want to get those guys chopped down if you're a Vikings defender. So having to deal with that is something that will be on their minds. What about in the opposite direction, or maybe even together, a Vikings defense perspective? Something that you're just looking forward to a little bit.
Yeah, I also think, like, looking at the Vikings defense in this game, it'll be really fun to see Ivan Pace track down Jahmyr Gibbs in the run game, where Pace is a smaller linebacker, height and weight wise, but he's very quick and does a good job in run defense. And then Gibbs is just like a special running back when it comes to his speed. Once he hits his the top of the acceleration, but he's also smaller too, and so it'll be a fun matchup to watch these two guys in open space.
I love when, like in stadium, if Jameer Gibbs fumbles or gets hit big or something, they do like the sound that plays when like Sonic gets hit by something and loses his rings. I just love that. It's great. It's really, really beautiful synergy there. Tasha. Speaking of beautiful synergy, the Vikings offense has been awesome to watch. As I mentioned, they go up early in that first game. They get some formation and motion creativity where you're able to get Justin Jefferson open. And that to me has been the theme of their season and really the whole entire way that Kevin O'Connell has built this offense, where it's not just, hey, you can double cover Justin Jefferson and be happy
Hmm.
to do it, because there are other threats on the offense that they're able to take advantage of. But O'Connell does a good job of getting him into a stack, getting him into, a three receiver set, but then moving him from kind of one spot to the other spot real quick, or even yo-yoing him kind of back and forth, where now I know that the defensive back is going to have outside leverage. All we did was to like create an inside, like an in breaker there. So a lot of ways that the Vikings offense has been positive. I thought that Sam Darnold continued to play just at a high level last week against the Packers. Just watching him just really, really shred cover three was a lot of fun. I thought their kind of between the numbers passing game was a good one just to watch from a over and over. Like, can we kind of really mess with these guys in zone coverage, really stretch them, really space it out properly to conflict defenders and create openings? And then sometimes, Darnold just got to let that thing fly, and he does. So it feels like, even though he is obviously at a later point in his career, he's not a rookie, it still does feel like he is kind of maturing in this offense. And I hope that, if he's in Minnesota next year, wherever he is next year, if he's able to, or I want him to keep this up. Obviously, is it going to be the same infrastructure with someone else? Maybe not, but you hope that you can continue to like take some of those lessons and be positive in that first game. I'm not sure if that was the first game without Aiden Hutchinson, but they didn't have Hutchinson. The Lions defense blitzed a ton there, and Darnold did throw that interception to Brian Branch. What do you have here for the Vikings offense?
Yeah, I mean Vikings offense, like you mentioned, is doing such a good job in the pass game right now. They're eighth in EPA per pass, but 22nd in EPA per rush. So they're definitely relying a lot more on the pass game. And Kevin O'Connell seems to understand that as a play caller, where weeks 1 through 12, he had a plus 2.5% pass rate over expected. So he's passing a little bit more than you would expect it to, but nothing too crazy. Weeks 13 through 17, it's gone up to a plus 7.5% pass rate over expected. So he wants the ball in Darnold's hands more, and he's doing a good job of distributing that ball to Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and TJ Hawkinson, where you have Jefferson, who has a 30% target share in this offense this year. That jumps up to a 33% target share against man coverage, which he'll probably be seeing a decent amount of in this game. So expect even more Justin Jefferson targets. And the main thing to me about them that I saw Restore the Roar point out on Twitter is they do a good job of overcoming negative plays. So, like, even though Sam Darnold has a decently high sack rate, especially for a passing offense that is this prolific, where they have the 25th, best sack rate in the league right now. They're ninth in being able to overcome or being able to score on drives in which they have a negative play. And so that is definitely promising if you're a Vikings fan, of which, you can have a negative play and Justin Jefferson can erase it.
Tej, I know our longtime listeners love whenever you pull a citation of someone's Twitter handle. Restore the roar. I mean, the roar's already restored. It's there. It's loud. It is clear. I do think one side of the ball that would like maybe a little bit more of a roar. The Lions defense, where no, obviously all the injuries rack up. I do think that Aaron Glenn has done such a good job at so many points along this season. I've I like watching Jack Campbell play football. I feel like I've said that a lot, even though whatever you think of him just as kind of an overall athlete, I think that watching his role expand a bit, seeing him able to make some of those tackles has been fun. And then obviously you have Kirby Joseph, the interception machine himself. And we don't have to talk anymore about how much we love Brian Branch. It feels like overall, they are a team that if you force like two punts, literally just two punts as a Lions defense, whether it's obviously punts or even if it's like being able to create a turnover, that's really all you need because the Lions offense is going to score. Like even in that game against the 49ers, we were talking back and forth and like the 49ers get out there early and both of us said like, yeah, you just got to stop them twice. The Lions are going to be able to continue to score on offense. But I don't know if you have any just fears overall about this Lions defense.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you would have to have fears about this Lions defense at this point where Brock Purdy was unstoppable in that first half. Like until Kirby Joseph got the two interceptions in the second half, like it looked like the Lions defense couldn't do anything they wanted to stop the 49ers offense. Since week 13, when like all the injuries started to pile up for this Lions defense, they ranked 32nd in defensive EPA per play. So definitely have not been playing well in that time span, and they've become a pass funnel. As you would have expected when you lose your best pass rushers and your best cornerback. And so plus 4.6 pass rate over expected right now. And like, losing best corner, like without Carlton Davis, these corners are really just like left out there in man coverage. Like Terrion Arnold we love his confidence, still figuring out how to play as a starting NFL corner. That definitely had some struggles in that game against the 49ers. So like Glenn is going to play man coverage. He's going to want to blitz, especially since week 13, they're blitzing 40% of the time. And when they don't blitz, they're allowing a 0.40 EPA per dropback, which is like better than an MVP level quarterback. When they do blitz, like that's their only chance of generating negative plays. So definitely expect Aaron Glenn to blitz a lot in this game and into the playoffs.
Deja, I think we've probably recorded like I don't know, maybe like 75, 80 pods together. I think the most passionate that you've ever been was your feeling just now over should we be scared about the Lions defense based on their performance in a week 17 game that you could say that it didn't matter at all, but I think you still learned a little bit there. I'm so interested to see how the Lions continue to approach this. Of course, we talk about Glenn's DNA all the time, right? He wants to play man coverage. He wants to blitz you. He wants to create some variance in that sort of way. As I mentioned, if you're a team that you just need to make two stops, you're going to let up touchdowns. This is going to happen, but you're really hoping your offense is able to kind of drive the entire car for most of the game. So if you're a Lions defense here, thinking about the way that the Vikings play offense, that you're not comfortable playing man coverage against all these guys, but there's a not a passivity necessarily to zone coverage, but you're not pressing the issue in the same sort of way. I think you do want to find a way to, make Sam Darnold continue to prove it, right? The way that he played under
Yeah.
pressure or just even like calm in the pocket against the Packers, you still have to do that on a game to game basis, and like that is, I think, really important. Really, the same in the opposite direction, where I felt like Jared Goff has played well under pressure, but just because someone has been playing well under pressure for one game or 12 games doesn't mean they're going to do it against you. I think if you're able to muddy it up on the back end a little bit, I'll be interested to see just like where Brian Branch is kind of rotating to when they get into some of their single high looks.
Hmm.
Obviously, he's going to be locked up in man coverage a lot, but are they going to have situations where he can kind of pass off and get to another route? Really, just I don't know if he's going to lean towards Jefferson every single time, but maybe playing off of the way that Minnesota wants to attack the middle of the field. What are you looking at here as a good matchup for the Vikings offense?
Yeah, so I think there are a lot of good matchups for the Vikings offense in the past game. In this game, the one like particular one is when the Lions play man coverage. Which we mentioned they like to do a lot of. The Vikings have the third best EPA per pass this season against man coverage, and you look back at that first matchup, and Lions played 5 instances of two man as charted by FTN data, and the Vikings basically gained 5 expected points added on those plays. 4 of those 5 plays were successful plays, and so if the Lions do play any of that sort of type of man coverage in this game, like the Vikings will definitely have the advantage.
I mean, you can't play man, can't play zone. I don't know what you're supposed to do. It is so tough. I kind of love that this matchup is that way, just because it's just absolutely, people love points, people love offense, it's exciting. But for me, it feels like, well, then what is your kind of one answer as a defense going to be? Is it we have a formation tell where we know when we're going to send kind of a slot corner and we're going to just do something to kind of create a splash play in that way? I'm excited to see what Minnesota has in terms of their no huddle game, where no huddle a lot of times, or you get to it kind of in spots here and there, but it can regulate the defense in a little bit of way, particularly if a defense is like, oh, we're hyper exotic, we're going to move around a ton of pieces. Just because sometimes the defense is going to have a like, hey, if they're in no huddle and like we are totally in like a rush, like we're not getting lined up fast enough, we're just going to play cover three. And that is a defense that all of these offense want to face, right? They want to constantly
Yeah.
be able to see cover three, single high. We can attack you deep. We can attack you and kind of conflict linebackers in the middle of the field looks. So I hope that Aaron Glenn has some kind of just like, hey, whether it's good or not, I just hope that it's fun, right? Whether it's, hey, the first time that they get a no huddle, if it's three receivers to a side, we're sending our backside linebacker, like 100%, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So I think that will be kind of a fun one to monitor. What do you have here as a matchup that you like for the Lions defense?
Yeah, so as a Lions fan in this game, like anytime the Vikings go to hand the ball off, it'll be a little bit sigh of relief. So I still think like Lions run defense is fine even with all the injuries. You mentioned like Jack Campbell on the second level as linebacker, like he's definitely doing a good job. Some of the backup linebackers that have been thrown into positions have had some nice moments in the run game, and so particularly in a zone run. So when the Vikings are running inside zone and outside zone, they haven't been that good. In those particular types of runs this year, the Lions have been really good at defending them, and especially when it's Cam Akers running these zone runs, like the Lions should have the advantage there on defense. When it's Aaron Jones, it's a little bit more up in the air.
Kevin O'Connell's run game overall, the first year they are like just running wide zone. Like that is all they were doing. The offensive line, I think, was having some issues just in terms of how they were getting to their double teams. The second year, he wants to get to a lot of counter, a little bit more duo, not always able to have as much success. This year, some of the success that they have had, not that it's been like this dominant run game, but a lot of it has been on Aaron Jones, kind of on some of those kind of zone tosses and kind of trusting his vision in that sort of way. But you got banged up a little bit last week. It's funny that you mentioned that you're just happy every time that the Vikings either hand the ball off or toss it back to Jones. Because you're telling me that you're afraid of the Sam Darnold dropping back 40 times game, which is it's just a funny thing, kind of as we have gone on in this season. And I mean, I just want to know what the Lions are comfortable with in that way. I wish you could just maybe get Aaron Glenn at a press conference, or maybe get him off the record, just because you want to, if you're a Lions defense, have a situation that you can create that variance. But obviously, if you're just killing the run game, like, I mean, the Vikings are just kind of burning downs at times. So that will be a fun one to review. Obviously, when we talk about it next week, what do you have here just as a fun matchup from the Vikings offense perspective?
Yeah, so I think that, like, in this game, like, the Vikings will probably have the most fun with Justin Jefferson versus Terran Arnold, where, like, Jefferson, like, that second half against the Packers, like, it seemed like they were trying to do so many things to stop him from getting targets and making those targets successful, and he just, like, kept coming up with, different ways to get the ball. He even had, like, an insane one-handed catch that didn't count because of a penalty, and, Terran Arnold, like, we love his confidence, like we said, but like still having some troubles as a starting NFL corner. So that matchup in this game will definitely be something that the Vikings will probably pick on a
I mean, now you're sounding like the person behind the Restore the Roar account. No, I've never seen any of their tweets. I don't want to come at they're
lot.
coming at Terry Arnold in any sort of way. I do think that, I mean, Arnold has talked a little bit actually about just figuring out different ways in press, particularly to kind of deal with it, to stop getting penalties and to have just higher level coverage overall. And, as a defense, you could say, all right, well, we're just never going to put Arnold over Justin Jefferson, right? Like, we're not going to do that. Or we're always going to have a safety over the top. The defense has that power. I do think, though, that O'Connell does a good job where you're motioning Jefferson to the opposite side. Either like, hey, you're going to not follow, or you probably are going to follow with whoever you have in coverage. So we can kind of manipulate the structure to the backside. Now you get Addison on Arnold in some of those ways. I am excited for just like after every throw, I love when a throw has no chance of being caught and the DB does the like incomplete sign. People like make fun of that. I think it's
I
so
love it.
beautiful to
Yeah.
do that because it's so hard to play defensive back. Like, it is impossible for these guys. Every week I'm talking about, oh, this is the new way that this coach is making sure that their receiver can be open. It's too hard to cover those guys. So even if it's not like, hey, this defensive back fully swatted the ball away, let those guys celebrate. Let's not be too hard on them. I'm interested to see like not that you can like feel if a play caller is tilting a little bit, but Kevin O'Connell's always going for the throw. He is always calling kill shots. I'm hopeful that he's able to kind of continue that aggressiveness in this game. It just feels like between him and Ben Johnson, I think it will be another very fun play call off in this one. What do you have here just as a fun matchup? Maybe thinking about it a little bit more from the Lions perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Lions will try to blitz Darnold a ton in this game. Like understanding like when you get him under pressure, that's your best chance of forcing negative plays. For the or from the Vikings offense perspective. So Aaron Glenn with a lot of blitzes in this game, and then I'm excited to see like kind of what Kevin O'Connell does to counteract that. Like Vikings use a decent amount of 12 personnel now that TJ Hawkinson is back. So are they getting into that to have the extra blocker or two if the Lions are blitzing, or they using Aaron Jones to pick up, in the pass protection game. Like that'll be fun to watch.
I think this is going to be a very fun